9 experienced hikers entered a remote Russian mountain in 1959. None of them came back alive. Their tent was found sliced open from the inside. And the cause of death? Still officially unexplained. This is the Dyatlov Pass incident, and it is one of the most terrifying unsolved mysteries in modern history. Decades of investigations, multiple official inquiries, and even a reopened Russian government case in 2019 have failed to provide a definitive answer. Scientists, historians, and investigators around the world are still debating what really happened on that mountain. Stay with me, because this story gets stranger with every fact. Welcome. Today we are diving deep into one of the most baffling cases in the history of exploration, the Dyatlov Pass incident. In February 1959, a group of 9 experienced Soviet hikers died under completely mysterious circumstances in the Ural Mountains of Russia. Over 60 years later, scientists still cannot fully agree on what killed them. The location was a remote mountain pass in the northern Ural Mountains of Russia, now called Dyatlov Pass after the group's leader, Igor Dyatlov. It was February, deep winter, temperatures dropping to -30 degrees Celsius. The group was on a challenging ski trek and was expected to return within weeks. They never did. In this video, we will go through 10 shocking facts about the Dyatlov Pass incident, from the bizarre evidence found at the scene to the most credible scientific theories that researchers have proposed. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly why this case has fascinated and terrified scientists for over 60 years. Let's dive in. Here's something surprising. These were not inexperienced hikers. The group was led by Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old engineering student and skilled hiker. All 9 members were experienced skiers and mountaineers from Ural Polytechnic Institute. They had completed multiple difficult mountain treks before. This was not a group of beginners who made a rookie mistake. These were some of the most prepared young hikers in the Soviet Union. Did you know that when rescuers found the tent, it had been cut open from the inside? The hikers had deliberately sliced through their own tent to escape, without putting on their shoes, coats, or gathering any supplies. Outside temperatures were around -25 to -30 degrees Celsius. Whatever they were running from terrified them so much that they chose to flee into a blizzard in their socks. What's even more fascinating, and deeply troubling, is that rescue teams found footprints leading away from the tent. Footprints in bare feet or thin socks, in temperatures of around -28 degrees Celsius. The hikers fled their tent without boots, without heavy coats, and without proper gear. 9 experienced, rational people collectively decided to run into a deadly blizzard with almost nothing protecting them. The question is why? Here's something that deepens the mystery significantly. The bodies were not found together. The first 5 were discovered at distances ranging from 300 to nearly 500 meters from the tent. 2 of them were found at the tree line, arms embracing a small fire that had gone out. The last 4 bodies were only discovered months later, buried under 4 meters of snow in a ravine, nearly 1.5 kilometers from the tent. Here's something surprising that changed this case from a tragedy into a true mystery. Several of the victims had severe internal injuries, fractured skulls, broken ribs, massive chest compressions. But critically, there were no corresponding external wounds. No bruising on the skin, no cuts, no signs of a physical fight or fall. The forensic examiner at the time said the force required to cause those injuries was comparable to a car crash, yet the bodies showed no outward signs of impact. Did you know that one of the victims, Lyudmila Dubinina, was found missing her tongue, eyes, and part of her lips and facial tissue? This detail has spawned dozens of theories for decades. Scientists have argued it was animal decomposition in the stream where she was found. Others have suggested something far more sinister. This single detail has made the Dyatlov Pass case one of the most horrifying unsolved mysteries in history. What's even more fascinating and alarming is that when investigators tested the clothing of several victims, they found elevated levels of radioactivity. 2 of the hikers' sweaters tested positive for radioactive contamination. This sparked theories about secret Soviet military tests, nuclear accidents nearby, or even something stranger. The Soviet government never fully explained this detail, which only deepened the mystery for investigators across the world. Here's something surprising that investigators noticed during the autopsy. Several of the victims showed a deep orange or tan discoloration of their skin. Their hair had also turned gray-white, despite them being young people in their early 20s. Some researchers attribute this to decomposition and exposure. Others point to radiation or extreme physiological stress. The skin discoloration remains one of the most visually disturbing and scientifically unexplained details of the case. Did you know that the most widely discussed theory for decades was a spontaneous avalanche? The idea is that the hikers heard or felt the mountain moving, panicked, and cut their way out of the tent to avoid being buried. However, this theory has significant problems. Multiple investigators and snow scientists have noted that the slope where the tent was pitched was too shallow and flat to naturally produce a deadly avalanche. And no clear avalanche evidence was found at the scene. What's even more fascinating is a theory involving infrasound, sound frequencies below what humans can consciously hear. Certain mountain wind conditions can produce infrasound at 18 to 19 Hz, which scientific experiments have shown can cause feelings of extreme panic, dread, vibration, and disorientation in humans. Some researchers believe a freak wind pattern created this effect at Dyatlov Pass, triggering mass panic in the group, causing them to flee without rational thought. Here's something surprising that scientists discovered. The specific shape of Kholat Cycle Mountain, where the group camped, can create a meteorological phenomenon called a Kármán vortex street. This is a pattern of spiraling air vortices that form in the wind shadow behind certain obstacles. Researchers have proposed that this specific wind pattern could have created wildly unpredictable snow loading on the slope above the tent, potentially causing a sudden localized snow slab collapse, even on a shallow slope. Did you know that the Soviet military was conducting weapons tests in the region around the time of the incident? Some investigators believe the hikers were accidentally caught in or near a military parachute mine test or rocket debris zone. This could explain the radioactive contamination on their clothing, the internal injuries without external wounds, and the Soviet government's initial classified response to the case. The government sealed the investigation files for decades. What's even more fascinating is that multiple independent witnesses from search parties and nearby weather stations reported seeing glowing orange spheres drifting over the mountains in the area during the same weeks as the incident. These were recorded in official Soviet military logs. Whether they were weather phenomena, experimental rockets, or something unexplained, these glowing orbs have remained one of the most persistent unexplained threads in the entire case. Here's something that speaks volumes. The Soviet government classified the Dyatlov Pass investigation files and restricted access to them for over 25 years. Investigators were told the files were sealed for reasons of national security. The families of the victims were not given full access to the case documents. When some files were finally declassified after the Soviet Union fell, pages were found to be missing. This secrecy has fueled speculation and conspiracy theories ever since. Did you know that many of the rescue workers and search party members who reached the site reported experiencing overwhelming feelings of fear and dread at the location? Some refused to camp on the slope and insisted on returning to lower ground each evening. Several rescuers described the site as having an oppressive, unnatural atmosphere. Whether this was psychological suggestion, infrasound effects, or something else remains genuinely unclear. What's even more fascinating is that investigators found cameras at the scene with film still inside. The photos were developed and showed the group happy, healthy, and setting up camp in normal conditions. But the last frame on one roll appeared to show a blurry, dark shape that has never been definitively identified. Some researchers say it was a person or object near the tent. Others say it was a photographic accident. It remains unexplained. Here's something fascinating that adds a cultural layer to this mystery. The mountain where the hikers died is called Kholat Cycle, which in the local Mansi language translates literally to Dead Mountain. The indigenous Mansi people of the region considered the mountain sacred and warned outsiders not to camp on its slopes. The Montsi were initially suspected in the investigation, but were quickly cleared of any involvement. However, the name of the mountain has added an eerie cultural dimension to the story that researchers cannot easily dismiss. Did you know that in 2019, 60 years after the incident, Russia's prosecutor general officially reopened the Dyatlov Pass investigation? After reviewing the case again, prosecutors declared that the most likely cause was a specific type of snow slab avalanche. However, the families of the victims and many independent researchers pushed back strongly on this conclusion. Critics pointed out that the physical evidence still does not fully support a simple avalanche explanation, and many questions remained unanswered. What's even more fascinating is that in 2021, a team of researchers from Switzerland published a scientific study in the journal Nature Communications. Using computer simulations of snow slab mechanics, they showed that a small but highly specific type of delayed snow slab avalanche was physically possible on the shallow slope at Dyatlov Pass under certain wind loading conditions. This was a significant advance in the scientific understanding of the case, though critics note it still does not explain the internal injuries, radiation, or missing soft tissue. Here's something deeply tragic in the details of this case. 2 of the first victims found were discovered beside a small fire at the tree line, approximately 500 meters from the tent. The branches of the pine tree above them were broken at heights, suggesting the men had climbed the tree, possibly to look back at the tent. Despite having tried to build a fire for warmth, they died from hypothermia. They had torn strips from their own clothing to feed the fire, but it was not enough. Did you know that investigators found that several victims were wearing clothing that did not belong to them, items that had been cut from other victims' bodies and put on? This indicates the surviving group members were desperately trying to warm themselves using their dead companions' clothing after some of the group had already perished. This tells researchers that there was a sequence of deaths, that some survivors lived long enough to try to help the others, and that the situation unfolded over time rather than all at once. What's even more fascinating and tragic is that the 4 victims found buried in the ravine months later had the most severe injuries of the entire group. 2 of them had broken ribs and fractured skulls. One had a fractured skull on both sides of the head. The force required was enormous. Yet no external wounds. No signs of a fall. No weapon marks. These 4 had survived the initial flight from the tent, made it the furthest, built shelter in the ravine, and then something caused catastrophic internal injuries. Here's something we should not forget at the heart of all these theories and facts. 9 real people died on that mountain. They had families, dreams, and futures. The reason this case continues to matter to scientists, historians, and researchers is not just because of the mystery. It is because those 9 people deserved a clear answer, and their families never fully got one. The pursuit of truth in this case is also an act of respect for 9 lives cut short. Alright, let's recap what we learned today. Because the Dyatlov Pass incident is a case where every single fact raises more questions. Here are the 5 most important things to take away from everything we just covered. First, the tent was cut from inside, meaning the hikers chose to flee. Second, they ran barefoot into extreme cold, something rational people only do in extreme panic or confusion. Third, several victims had fatal internal injuries with no external cause, which remains scientifically unexplained to this day. These 3 physical facts are the heart of the mystery. Fourth, radioactive contamination was found on the clothing of multiple victims, and the Soviet government never adequately explained it. Fifth, the Soviet government sealed the investigation files for decades, and pages are still missing from the records today. These 2 facts mean that even if we accept a natural explanation for the deaths, the full truth of this case has never been made public. The big picture? The Dyatlov Pass incident is not just a campfire mystery story. It sits at the intersection of real science, Cold War secrecy, and deep human tragedy. Multiple credible theories exist. None of them answers every question. And that is what keeps researchers coming back to this case year after year. Sometimes the most important lesson is knowing what we still do not know, and staying curious enough to keep looking. And that is a wrap on the Dyatlov Pass mystery. 9 hikers, 1 mountain, zero definitive answers, and one of the most gripping unsolved cases in modern history. The mystery of what happened on that mountain in February 1959 has outlived the Soviet Union and continues to challenge the best researchers in the world. Stay curious, because curiosity is how we eventually find the truth. If this video made you think or gave you something new to talk about, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell right now. We drop new fact videos every week, and the next one is going to be just as mind-bending as this one. It takes 2 seconds, and it genuinely helps us keep making content like this for you. And before you go, I want to know what you think happened on Dyatlov Pass. Was it an avalanche? Military testing? Infrasound panic? Or something we have not even considered yet? Drop your theory in the comments. I genuinely read every single one. Thank you so much for watching. Stay curious, stay spiky, and I will see you in the next video.